What's up, YouTube? Here's another installment of a VCR repair. I picked this particular VCR up on eBay. And this video series, really what I want to try to do is teach people how to fix their old electronics and keep them out of the landfill. A lot of the time, these old units, specifically the VCRs, are just dirty and need a nice cleanup. Other times you might have to get more invasive with your repair and solder in a new component. Today's unit needs a little bit of both. So let's jump right in. This is the Sony SLV-N51. Fairly popular model. I see these on eBay all the time for parts of repair. And the seller's note from this one was that it works mostly, but it eats the tape sometimes. And we're going to try to fix that today. So we grab our favorite number 2 Phillips head. There are 3 screws on the back of this particular unit, and I'll just speed this up real quick. Once they're all out, the top should lift off fairly easily. Just slide it towards the rear and lift it out. Usually the first thing I take a look at is the actual VCR mechanism. So the head drum, pinch roller, capstan motor, things like that. Right now I'm focusing on the head drum because it is pretty gunky and dirty. It's got some buildup here and there, so we need to clean that off. That might be the whole problem with this VCR, is that this gunk just grabs that magnetic tape and pulls it in. And once that happens, it's game over. The tape's eaten. I'm checking out other things. Now I'm looking at the capacitors, seeing if there's anything blown, bulging. Probably shouldn't be, since the description was that it did work. It just ate tape sometimes. Next, I'm going to take a look at the pinch roller. Seems like it actuates fine and spins, so not a concern there. Next, to get this unit apart, we need to pull out this face. So I'm just pointing to the different tabs that need to be pulled out in order to remove the faceplate. I'd be pretty gentle in lifting these up. If I were you, these old plastic tabs are just ready to break. There's some tabs underneath as well that I'm trying to get to. I usually like sliding the front of the unit off the table a little bit when I try to pull these off, but I'm trying to get a good camera view of it, so I'm just leaning the unit back on its back there. And I'm pulling these bottom tabs just so that they unclip. Again, trying to be gentle and not snap anything off. Next thing to address, this RCA connection in the front. This one's pretty cool, I think, at least, because it's just slid in and has a push connector. A lot of the later units were just soldered directly in, and this just seemed a little bit different, so it's interesting to me. Now I'm just kind of looking over the unit. This is the first time I've taken this particular model apart, so I'm just kind of getting familiar with it. Something that I notice almost immediately, this auto head cleaner is just deteriorated. Probably what created all this gunk on the head drum here. Originally, these were designed to just wipe against the heads and clean them, but just over time, these pieces of foam deteriorate, become gunky. I would recommend, if you have a VCR in good working order, just to rip these out, throw them away. They're not doing you any favors when the VCR plays, because it's just clogging your heads. Here's this close-up I promised. Just spinning this head drum around, you can see all this gunk. Really, this should be completely clean, shiny. This is the eraser head. It's got some gunk on it as well. This audio pickup and the audio writer, a little bit of gunk as well, so it's likely this has gotten transferred back and forth as the unit's been played. Next, I'm going to take the actual tape deck out of the unit. There's ribbon cables here that go to the audio head. There's another ribbon cable that goes to the head drum. You can just slide both of those out. On later models, you've actually got these cables soldered to the main board, so you can't lift the entire deck out unless you desolder everything. I'll mention there's also a plug that goes to the loading motor On the top right, I unplugged that as well. Now just taking the rest of the screws out. There's a various number of screws depending on what model you have, so just make sure you've gotten all of them before you try to yank that deck out of the unit. When I pulled this screw out, I just noticed the amount of that auto head cleaner foam on my finger, so this gunk's gotten everywhere. It's a good idea just to go throughout this machine and wipe it out as you can. Now I'm about to remove the support bar when I notice a very small IC sitting on the table. Not sure where it came from. I pick it up and I start to examine it. I pick up the RCA connector that I pulled out because it was kind of sitting close to it. So I look at that, but doesn't go to that. Nowhere to go there. So I look this up, and it is a TL431 shunt voltage regulator, primarily used in switch mode power supplies. So I'm not entirely sure where it came from. I do tear open those little wall units and wall adapters from time to time because they do have low ESR capacitors that you can harvest. So I'm just kind of praying that it came from one of those because I couldn't find anywhere on anything I opened up recently that it would have fallen off of. But I kept this in. I don't want to put on any type of facade that I'm some expert. I'm just a guy doing this as a side hustle and a little hobby for fun. But back to it then. Taking out this last screw to get the support bar out. And I pick up the faceplate again, just looking to see if that TL431 could have gone from that, but it doesn't make any sense. Don't know why I grabbed it. And I noticed I forgot one screw right here in the front, so I take that out. And now this tape deck is ready to come out. I flip it over, take a look at the belt under here. Definitely a good amount of fading and wear on the various plastic components here. That's pretty much to be expected with the age of this unit. Taking a look at other items, just seeing if there's anything that's gonna fall off or that's broken on this unit. Everything seems overall to be in good shape for its age. With the tape deck out now, I'm going to reach for the mode switch. It's this little white circular item that I'm reaching for right now. I'd say about 90% of the VCRs that I come across that have the problem of, quote, eating tapes is due to this just being dirty. So this white top here comes off. You just need to be very gentle when you pry it up. It does just snap in, and there are delicate metal fingers on the underside, so you need to be cognizant of that, not to damage those. I'll pause right here and you can see the 4 metal fingers, very small, very fragile. You do not want to break these. Good luck finding replacement parts nowadays for something like this. I'll zoom in and pause on the base of the mode switch. These metal contacts as well as the metal fingers on the cap need to be cleaned and protected with something like dielectric grease so that the oxidization that happened before doesn't reoccur. So my preferred method of tackling this is to get some contact cleaner. I'm using WD-40's electrical contact cleaner, not WD-40 lubricant, but the actual contact cleaner that they sell. And I'm spraying it on some Q-tips, spraying it in the actual mode switch and just wiping away any of the grease, any of the gunk that has over time become conductive, and it confuses the VCR in which mode it is: play, rewind, fast forward, eject. It doesn't know where it is, so it doesn't know what to do with the tape, and therefore it just eats the tape. This is the WD-40 contact cleaner that I'm talking about, spraying it right in there. It doesn't really affect plastics too much. I wouldn't say you should just go crazy and spray the whole board down with it, but if you're just conservative with it, really shouldn't do any damage to any component in here. Speeding things up a little bit, just scrubbing this down. You want this to be nice and shiny when you're done. I grab a brass brush, kind of lightly scrub here and there in circular motions. Really just trying to get these contacts nice and shiny. One last spritz with the cleaner, just getting any pieces that I've scraped up with that brush. I've seen people use steel brushes, so if you have a steel brush, just be light, don't go crazy with it. Next, we're going to address these fingers here. Again, using the Q-tips with the contact cleaner, lightly scrubbing in one direction. Make sure you go with the fingers. Do not scrub backwards. You might snap one of them off. The next thing I'm doing here is just bending the fingers very lightly upwards to make sure they have good downward force on the contacts when you reinstall this switch. I'm just using a little pen cap here. That's really what I had that fit under the fingers. And again, gently pushing those up. And I mentioned that we need dielectric grease, so I use this Super Lube multi-purpose synthetic grease. It does say it's dielectric. That's probably the most important quality that you want when selecting a grease for this application. I'll be putting just a tiny bit on this Q-tip and spreading it all around the base of the mode switch, doing my best to squeeze the grease into every nook and cranny. When it comes time to reinstall this mode switch, you want to put it in directly over the base, even pressure on all sides, and just kind of push and wiggle until you hear it snap back in. I rotate it around a few times. The goal here is to make sure that that grease is well distributed. Next, I'm going to identify the orientation that your mode switch should be. There's a little arrow here, there's an arrow on the board. If your VCR was in the home position, meaning it had ejected a tape and was ready to accept another one, this is where it should line up. And it is important when you drop the deck back in that this lines up correctly. There is a hole in the gear on the underside of the deck that this little tab has to insert into, so that's why there's an arrow for alignment. I'm just taking a look at the circuit board here again, taking a close look at capacitors, the electrolytic capacitors. Electronics of this vintage, they are notorious for creeping up in ESR and causing issues like failure to power on. But not all failed caps or high ESR caps are going to have telltale signs like bulging or leaking fluid, so it's better just to measure them directly if you have anything suspected of failing. Next, I remove the belt from the underside of this unit. The belt runs from the capstan motor to the gear mechanism. As the capstan shaft and pinch roller pull that magnetic tape off of your cassette, the belt transfers that drive to those gears and it takes up that magnetic tape so that it spools onto the other side of the cassette properly. I'm just stretching it a little bit, taking a look at it, seeing if how stiff it is. Really isn't that bad. If you stretch one of these and it fails to snap back to its original shape, it kind of just creeps back to the original shape, well then yeah, that's bad and you need to replace it. You can probably find generic replacements on Amazon, maybe a pack of 100 belts. You just look for the one that fits most closely to yours. If your belt's not in that bad of condition, you can use acetone to clean the oils, dirt, anything that's gotten into the surface. What I do here is just get a rag and soak it down a little bit with that acetone, and I'm going to pull the belt through that folded over rag multiple times and just keep cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. It takes a while, but eventually the belt starts to become a little sticky again and the amount of debris that's left on the rag becomes less and less. So I pull this through a good number of times, probably a bit excessive, but it does get the belt nice and clean. Here I switch to a high percentage isopropyl alcohol and I'm cleaning the pulleys the belt rides on. Getting into those grooves, cleaning out any grease, dirt, debris that may have gotten in here that would cause the belt to slip. Next, I get out my LCR meter. This meter can read inductance, capacitance, and resistance. I'm going to be using the capacitance mode because it also measures ESR, which is an important value when you're looking at capacitors and switch mode power supplies. To know what's an acceptable value for each capacitor, you'll have to look that up online. I only found one capacitor that had a little bit high ESR, which is the one I'm holding here. I already pulled that out, and I'll go and measure it here. If you look at the value in the lower left-hand corner, it's about 200 milliohms or so. Probably should be half or even a quarter of that. I believe this is a 16 volt at 330. So I measure one that I have as a replacement, and it's only about 55 or so milliohms, which is significantly lower. So we're going to install that one. When installing electrolytic capacitors, you need to respect the polarity. That's that white line on the side. That means it's negative, so you need to line that up there with the negative side of the board. These are little tweezers that I got from Radio Shack probably over a decade ago. They help hold the components in, and they're also a heat sink. I'm adding some flux here to the joints. Flux is going to help clean the surface of oxides and help the solder flow in a lot easier. After I'm done grabbing that isopropyl and scrubbing off the flux residue here, next, I'm cleaning off that grime, that gunk that was all over the head drum, being very careful not to make contact with the actual heads as they are delicate and they could snap off. I'm purely rubbing the gunk off of the steel head drum. Next, I have some folded over paper soaked in isopropyl alcohol, and I just lightly press that against the heads as I push the drum along and let that drag through. This cleans the heads pretty well. And when you look here, not that much dirt in the head, so I don't dwell on this for too long. Just give it another couple spins and I'm done here. Here I've switched over to acetone on this Q-tip. As I scrub the pinch roller, it's going to remove any dirt, debris, or any gunk on the surface here, and it'll help the pinch roller grab the tape and pull it through the mechanism. With everything nice and clean, I switch to this Super Lube and I grease the mechanism. Okay, now it's time for reassembly and a test run. Moment of truth, putting in a test tape. Here's where I realized I didn't have the RCA cables connected, so plugging everything in. If I take the camera off the stand here, I can show that indeed there is something playing and there's sound too, but I'm not looking to get a copyright claim on this video, so you'll have to take my word for it. And this is where this video ends. I'm running the tape through rewind, fast forward, eject. I'm trying a different tape. I want to be confident that this unit is indeed fixed as I'm going to resell it. Let me know if this video helped you at all. Comment down below. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks.